Okay, let's dive into this. $543,000. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second, right? We're not talking about some crazy lottery fantasy here or some ultra-complex day trading scheme. No, this is the exact mathematical destination of a very simple, surprisingly ordinary habit. But, before we even get to the end of this story, we've got to talk about where it begins. Because actually getting that $500 into an account, well, that's the first real psychological hurdle we all face.
Because let's be real, you already know how $500 usually behaves. The money hits your checking account and almost instantly, poof, it's gone. And not in some huge dramatic crisis either. It's just gone in the totally ordinary way that every adult's money disappears. It gets swallowed up by rent, by insurance bills, maybe that giant stack of streaming subscriptions you swore you were going to cancel, or paying down a credit card balance. For most of us, that $500 is literally spoken for before the bank even clears the deposit. And hey, let's be super clear about this. That is absolutely not a personal failure. It's just the standard condition. It's the water we're all swimming in. But what if we decided to intercept that money before it vanished?
To totally flip that reality, the story actually starts on a completely ordinary day. Let's just call it a Tuesday. On a Tuesday, you sit down, grab your laptop, and open a brokerage account. You don't need some perfectly crafted master plan. You literally just need to start. You take that $500 and you split it up. Maybe $300 goes into a Roth IRA for tax-free growth on the first of the month, and then the other $200 goes into a standard brokerage account around the 15th. You use it to buy a low-cost index fund, which is basically just a single basket that tracks the broader stock market. Boom. Then you set those transfers to automatic. Set it and forget it. And honestly, this is where the real challenge begins. The absolute hardest thing this entire strategy will ever ask of you is simply this. You must leave it alone.
Let's trace how this actually feels as the months tick by, because trust me, it is not a smooth emotional ride. By month 3, your account sits at around $1,700. The market's been bouncing around, and honestly, your growth kind of looks like a rounding error. This is the exact moment most people just throw in the towel, because our brains are totally wired to crave immediate, visible rewards. But if you push through that delayed feedback, something magical starts to happen. By year 1, you hit $6,200. The growth is finally starting to look real. But honestly, what's more important is that your lifestyle has quietly adjusted. By December, you've completely restructured your life around having $500 less each month, and you probably don't even feel it anymore. By year 3, with almost $20,000 sitting in that account, the momentum is just undeniable. The math is finally starting to do the heavy lifting for you.
By that third year, a really stark contrast emerges, and it's one you can finally see with your own eyes. Think about the money that left your account over those last 36 months. What did that $500 a month become when you chose not to keep it? I mean, a fancy dinner here, a weekend trip there, impulse buys that you've long since forgotten about, right? It leaves absolutely no record and has zero remaining value. But the money that stayed? It is now a completely different beast altogether. It is running, it's compounding, and it is quietly building this invisible financial infrastructure right beneath your feet. But, as we know, any good infrastructure has to survive a storm or two. So let's say in year 4, the market drops. And I don't mean a little dip. I mean a real stomach-dropping fall. The kind that totally dominates the news headlines and makes people call their financial advisors in an absolute blind panic. You have to sit there and watch this account you spent years building lose ground week after week. The urge to sell everything or just pause those automatic transfers is going to be overwhelming, but you don't. You do nothing. And let me tell you, in investing, doing nothing during a total panic is the hardest and yet most absolutely triumphant action you can possibly take. You just stay the course. The market eventually recovers, like it historically always does, and you prove to yourself that you actually have the temperament to build real wealth.
Now, what's really interesting about this 5-year mark is the breakdown. Your account has grown to $41,000. You've contributed $30,000 of your own hard-earned cash, which means the market and the sheer power of compounding has added an extra $11,000 on top of that. Just really think about that for a second. That's $11,000 you didn't have to clock in for. You didn't negotiate a raise to get it, and you never traded a single precious hour of your life to produce it. This money was generated simply because capital left in a growing market earns a return, and then that return earns its own return. Your account is officially working for you.
So, fast forward to year 10, and you are sitting on roughly $96,000. You are right on the doorstep of that massive 6-figure milestone. But honestly, the total balance isn't even the coolest part of this. Notice the comparison between these two numbers. Your annual contribution is still $6,000, that's your $500 a month. But in a strong year, the account's return is now approaching $7,000. Think about what that means. For the very first time, this account is actually generating more money in a single year than you are physically putting into it.
So, the crucial point is exactly this. We call it the crossover point. Honestly, this is like the holy grail of investing. It's that exact, magical moment when the capital already sitting inside your account starts working harder than you do. It suddenly becomes a way more significant driver of growth than the new cash you're scraping together from your paycheck. The entire mathematical reality of your life has permanently shifted at this point. The account, it's no longer waiting on you to fill it up. It is actively running ahead of you. But getting to this magical point requires time. And well, time is the literal one thing you can't just manufacture more of. Let's look at the really harsh arithmetic of waiting. Let's say you delayed starting this exact system by just 5 years. So you start at age 30 instead of 25. The cost of that delay? It's approximately $58,000. No joke, $58,000. It's essentially this massive invisible invoice for waiting. It doesn't show up in your mailbox, right? No debt collector calls you to get it, but it is a very real, completely permanent penalty. And there is absolutely no version of the future where you get those 5 years back. And the crazy thing is, this invisible cost is everywhere around us. Imagine you're at year 10, right? And a coworker who's watched you quietly build this discipline over the last decade finally pulls you aside in the break room. They ask, hey, has that investing thing actually been worth it? You tell them, yeah, you're nearing $100,000. They go quiet for a second, and then they utter quite literally 5 of the most expensive words in the English language. I've been meaning to start. And you just nod, because you know the silent tragedy wrapped up in that sentence. You know exactly what just meaning to start is about to cost them.
As you push into years 15 and 20, the nature of the account totally transforms again. At year 15, you're looking at about $184,000. By year 20, you're near $295,000, which, by the way, is generating roughly $20,000 a year in returns alone. But what's truly fascinating here is how this wealth actually feels. It stops feeling like this shiny, exciting achievement, and it just becomes a quiet, underlying condition of your life. It's like a structural wall holding up a building. When economic dread hits your city, the layoffs, the closed storefronts, just that general ambient anxiety, you aren't perfectly immune to it, but you experience it completely differently, because you are watching the storm from a rock-solid structural foundation that simply did not exist 2 decades ago.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens by the time you reach year 30. You hit this totally mind-bending destination. Your account has reached $543,000. But seriously, look at the breakdown of those funds. Over 30 years, you put in $180,000 of your own money. The market, just through time and compounding, put in $363,000. Your own input is now just a tiny fraction of the massive wealth generated by time. This inversion? This is the exact concept that most people just cannot hold in their heads when they're staring at month 1, wondering if their little $500 contribution is even going to matter.
Which brings us right back to today and the reality of your current checking account. Right now, there might be $500 sitting in there, completely unclaimed, just waiting to be assigned a purpose. And in the next few days, something is going to try to claim it. A totally spontaneous purchase, a phone upgrade, maybe a weekend plan that feels completely justified in the moment. But you have to reframe that moment now, because now you know the math. The choice you're about to make, it is not a $500 choice. It is quite literally a $363,000 sacrifice from your future reality. Which leaves us with one final, totally unavoidable question. How many people are sitting there right now, looking at their phone with that $500 still unclaimed? Are you one explainer away from finally doing it differently? Because the timeline is completely yours to start. All it takes is a Tuesday, an automatic transfer, and the discipline to let time do the heavy lifting for you. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I seriously challenge you to make your future self proud today.